Supernatural Season 9, Episode 4, Slumber Party. Now, initially, I was a little upset that this episode was going to be, a filler episode, especially with how last week's, episode ended with Dean basically, kicking Cass out of the Men of Letters base. And, I was really looking forward to seeing, like, an emotional story between Dean and Cass and, Dean having to tell Cass, hey, as much as we're family, you can't be here because Sam's basically possessed, and I need you know Zeke to stay in his body so that Sam can live. But we didn't get that, and I'm sure we'll get that. Not next week because the preview once again seemed like it would be a filler episode, which is kind of unfortunate because I just want the story like most of you do, I'm sure. But I'm sure they'll do another great episode just like this one, which I actually enjoyed a lot more than I expected to. I figured, you know, I'll still enjoy it because it's supernatural, and whether it's filler or a regular episode, it's always a good supernatural episode because the show is just written very well. And I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought because it wasn't just, Wizard of Oz brought into the real world. It was, even though they didn't show a lot of the super dark stuff, they made it, dialogue wise, they mentioned how dark everything really was and how, certain stuff was a lot bloodier and how Dorothy died in The Wizard of Oz. And, the books are completely different, and her father just wrote that, just because, that's how he wanted things to be. But, it was really cool. The woman who played Dorothy, I thought she was really good in this episode. And, she had certain lines where she'd say, and it was obviously like really old stuff, like, old timey words, which was kind of good. And excuse me, I love how they had the black and white portions in this episode, and they had the old guy and the young guy when they started up the base. Like literally the first day it was turned on. Like they didn't even know each other until after they did that. And then they introduced themselves to each other, and like the old guy is like it took this much time to make this dump, and the young guy is of course like the super energetic kid, and he's like like what are you talking about? This is like he says like this whole spiel like this is the last beacon of hope for it's like the final place for the fight between light and dark and stuff. And then after a couple of months they're just playing chess, and he's like what a dump, just like the old guy was saying. So it was cool to see that. They were funny. Sadly the young kid ends up getting killed off because he gets taken over by the witch. But in the little bit that they were in, it was pretty cool. And their conversation with Dorothy I thought was really cool. It's like I just like how she was in that time. It makes her even cooler because she stood up to men during a time where that was really not something that happened. And I always love seeing that happen, female power and stuff. And she did it in a very funny, sarcastic way, so that made it even cooler to see. But I thought she was a great character and a great actress as well. But it was a great take on Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. The Wicked Witch, they took out her tongue, and I feel like that was just like so they wouldn't have to figure out how to make it cool compared to the movies where she's just like has like a high pitched voice and stuff. They just cut her tongue out. She can't say anything. Problem solved. But she's trying to bring her legions, the flying monkeys, to our world, which is pretty cool. And she's going through trying to find this key that makes any door a door to Oz. And in this episode, it was really weird that we got Crowley in this. I thought he'd have a much bigger role, but it was just for complete comedy's sake. But it was great to see him anyway. And you kind of have to have him in there because with them being in the base the entire episode, it would be weird if he wasn't. And, it would be like if Kevin was there and they just didn't talk to him at all the whole episode. They just didn't show him. And they were just like, oh, Kevin was there, but he wasn't on camera or something weird like that. It wouldn't make any sense. So, he didn't have a real big role in this episode. It was just, logical that he'd be in the episode because they're in the base the entire time. So it was cool to get to see him, kind of interact with the Wicked Witch and have his little moments. And, he was talking about how he just wanted to stretch his legs and stuff. And in the ending scene, it was kind of funny when Sam is like locking him back up. They make it seem like there's like a whole scene missing where he did something, and like Sam just like locks him back up, and then he like shows him the crayon and slams it on the table and just walks out. and then he's just in the dark, and it seemed like I completely missed an entire little portion right there. But it was funny to see him, and it's always cool to see Crawley because he always has something funny to say, and just like he does in this episode. So it was good to see him. But we also get Felicia Day, who's Charlie again, and she's always funny, always making random nerdy references, Commodore 64 and stuff like that. One thing they had her do, she said like the really old line from the show, like hunting and stuff, the family business. I thought that was pretty cool that they put that in the episode. She was really cool in this, more so than other episodes, because she's just the nerdy tech girl. And then this, she was the one who ended up saving everyone because, as they showed in the preview from, the last time she was in the show, she was kind of getting into actually becoming a hunter. And she talks about how she did a few small hunting jobs. So that was really cool. And then, in the end of this episode, she does go off with Dorothy to Oz because, she stepped up and now she's going to be a hunter. And that was pretty cool to see. And I'm hoping that they do come back in some way. And obviously, it doesn't have to be related to the Wizard of Oz. But like I said, I do like the actress that played Dorothy. So it'd be cool to have her come back and, she still has the mannerisms of someone who was in, like the 1920s and stuff like that. So it'd be really cool to see. And then, Charlie's also a cool character. It'd be cool to see her come back as a more pronounced hunter rather than, she's kind of being a hunter now. She's sort of full-fledged. She helped Dorothy out, with the rebellion and stuff. And that would be pretty cool to see. But we'll have to, just wait and see if that stuff happens. But it would be nice to see both of those characters come back. And if Dorothy doesn't, I'm sure Charlie will because she's kind of, she's one of those recurring characters that does come back at least once a season, if not more than that. But it'd be cool to see them come back in the future. But for now, in this episode, they're both really good. It was cool to see them interact where, Dorothy kind of sees how different things are and she hears, how like Sam and Dean basically compliment Charlie. And, like in the very beginning when they all split up, Sam and Dean basically tell Dorothy like we're sure you can help, but for now, since you've kind of been knocked out for like 75 years, why don't you hold on a little bit and you stay in the room with the smartest person here? And then like Charlie's kind of just smiling to herself, and it was kind of cool to see that. And you could obviously tell Dorothy was like, okay, clearly I'm in a different time when not only is this woman a woman of letters, but she's being complimented by a man who's saying she's the smartest one. And it was just a random little cool thing to have. And just their interactions were pretty nice. And so they're obviously friends now because they go off together into this episode. But it was really cool to see Wicked Witch, who's obviously like insanely powerful in this, which was nice. Kind of led to a great little hint, which of course is eventually just going to lead to Sam and Dean having an argument. But in this episode, when the Wicked Witch does kill Charlie, as soon as Sam comes into the room, the first thing Dean says is Zeke. And as soon as he says it, Ezekiel kind of just, flips a switch, and Sam's kind of like pushed to the back, and, Ezekiel comes out, and they have to talk, and, Dean chooses to have Ezekiel save Charlie, even though he knows that'll have, that'll keep Ezekiel inside of Sam for much longer than, before if he hadn't used his powers. But he saves Charlie, passes out again, and then Sam wakes up and Dean makes another lie, of course. I mean, if it's gonna happen every time and Sam just ends up falling on the ground, he's gonna eventually figure out, like, I've been getting beat up a lot this season. But we'll just have to wait to see when that happens. But he heard Dean say Zeke, so if it happens again, like in a random emergency situation where Dean's like, Zeke, I need you to do this or do that, or he just says Zeke, Sam's gonna figure out something because Sam isn't an idiot. So they gave us that little tease where he got like the first little hint that something's off. But of course, he can't really question it once Dean says, I think you're just a little dizzy or something like that. Because when you get knocked out by something supernatural, you can kind of take anyone else's word because you have no idea what just happened. So we got that first little hint of Sam finding out that he's possessed by an angel. So, it's gonna happen, but I don't think we're gonna get to actually see that conclusion until maybe the mid-season finale, or maybe not even until next year when things start up again. But they gave us the first hint. We're definitely gonna get that sometime this season. But a great episode overall. Much, like I said, it was much better than what I was expecting. I thought, oh, Wizard of Oz. I wanted, a cast episode with all this different emotional stuff happening, and then it's just like, here's a filler, and then it's just like a Wizard of Oz filler, and I was just like, wasn't super excited for it. But watching the episode, I really loved it. They did a lot that, I didn't expect. They had, the black and white portions when Dorothy brings the Wicked Witch to the base for the first time, and, the characters back then, they have they talk about how it's a much darker version of the Wizard of Oz. The real life version is a lot darker than the storybooks. And I always love when, movies or shows talk about that, like fairy tales, where it is the much darker version, which is the original version, like the Brothers Grimm type stuff. And, Red Robin Hood and the Three Pigs and things like that. When a wolf is involved, people don't just, be happy and they get killed. So, stuff like that is always great, which, Supernatural did seasons ago when they actually talked about that, when they mentioned how fairy tale stuff isn't, just happy and people just beat the bad guy or beat the wolf or anything. They get killed and people don't make it, like, ever, really. And so, they did that in that episode. I want to say that was like maybe season 3 or 4 or something like that. That was a while ago, really. But, I love that episode because it does speak to the realism of those stories and not like campy, happy Disney versions. And so we get that again in this episode with the Wizard of Oz. And I thought it was just a really good surprise for, what I thought the episode was going to be, which was just, the Wicked Witch. And I thought they're actually going to go to Oz, or like, sort of a supernatural version of Oz. But, they didn't do that. They stayed in the base. We got to see a lot of the base, dungeon, super old computer, a garage that had all these cool cars in it. So I'm sure that's gonna come into the show later, and in later episodes where Dean is like looking at all the old cars and stuff. But great episode. We got to like I said, see more of the base. We got to see Crowley for a little bit, have his little funny moments. Charlie came back, and now she's gonna be a full hunter, I guess. Once she sort of comes back from Oz with Dorothy. And we got Dorothy, who's a pretty cool character in this. She's not just the little girl from the Wizard of Oz who, met a scarecrow, a tin man, and a lion and beat the witch. She's like a tough girl who was put in a crazy situation, surrounded by like war and blood, and then she came out alive, even though she technically died. But she came back to life, and she became a hunter. So it was a really great episode, actually. Even though it didn't add a lot to the actual story, it added a lot to the show in a way, because it was just a cool episode, which I really do hope they build on, in future episodes with Dorothy and Charlie coming back into the show. But comment below, let me know what you thought of this episode. Favorite parts, least favorite parts. Did you like Dorothy? Did you like the black and white portions of the episode? Because that was definitely really cool to me, just having the people just speak with the old dialogue. And I can't remember what the young guy said, but it was something he said about things being crappy. I think topsy-turvy was the line he used, and I was like, yep, that's just old words that people just don't say anymore. I always love that in shows. And it's always a little bit funnier when it's really serious, when people are just acting in that time and it's not just a comedy show where they're saying that stuff. It's just how people really talked, and people who live today laugh at that stuff because it's just like they're really old terms to us now, because we don't say, oh, things are getting real topsy-turvy, because it's weird now. But a great episode, like I said. What did you think of it? Did you like Dorothy, not like Dorothy? Or were you glad to see Charlie come back? If you're not a Felicia Day fan, were you glad to see Charlie come back? Do you like her as a character? Everything else about the episode, random questions. Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.